Permission.
Recording is on.
All right, so who do we got? We got Sabril. I believe M is Manu. Hello, Manu, the man of the hour. We got Ross, and we got Edgar. Yeah, usually I post it 10 minutes late, and this time I posted it 10 minutes early for folks. So
M is Miro.
Oh, that's Miro. M is
Yeah.
Miro. Okay. What's up, Miro? And we got 329. So yeah, people will be coming in. Let me share my screen. Me and Miro did some studying today. Where are we going? Share my screen. How's is my volume okay, everybody?
Who's watching an Italian video?
Let's see. Somebody's watching an Italian video. I don't know. Okay.
Yeah, they're talking about how they're getting the third dose today. I don't know. Some video.
So we got Edgar. I mean, I'll just go, and if Manu comes, he comes. He might have forgot. We'll see. So, yeah, I wrote this the other day. I used to write these little write-ups all the time, and I'm going to start doing them again. They're just kind of grounds me a little bit. And, oops. But I didn't write one for the, why can't I move that? I didn't write one for this big day. This was a really interesting day. And we were talking about it on the channel. And I didn't make a call when it was here. I think I was ill that day. But as this was happening in real time, obviously it didn't look like this. But just imagine that it was at yesterday's high at this point. So it didn't go all the way up yet. Calling it real time based on that momentum, it's just, let's see here. It was what I was thinking is just basically there's beauty in the chart sometimes. So there's this, and use this sparingly, but basically harmony and pairs, beauty principle. You're in a sideways range, you broke up. You're in a sideways range, broke up. There's so many different ways to describe it. My mentor called it the beauty principle. Let's just make it less abstract. When you're balancing, right, especially when the intermediate term's bearish, right, and you're at a major zone. This was a major supply demand zone. You can see with this VPOC here, it's just tons of sideways action, multi-month major zone. First test came back down. Second test, we got the double bottom, but we didn't get that. And I remember calling it in real time. It's like we didn't get that strong reaction on the second test. What we did is we were creeping down. So everyone was, and me included, this is not the type of price action you're thinking like, okay, you're not getting the action reaction, but given that each one of these are a day, I had that white line there because that was actually a trade that I did take before I got sick last week with the resting order based on trade location only, but I wasn't thinking it was going to reverse there. That was for tradable reaction, right? The blue line is bigger. So we start congesting. And then we made an attempt to break down out of this sideways range, right? And if this trend was going to continue, we were going to get a real breakdown. That's what we kind of needed. Instead, we got really rejected quickly. It was like the bears are done. And, perfectly hitting on the VPOC here. And then we continued to congest. So when we were talking about it real time, this we got to think in terms of time cycles. One of the things that we talk about in trading is being patient because we got to think in terms of the time cycles. And I'm not saying you got to get those Gannon fans like Chart Picasso does, although I did ask him about some of that. I'll have him on to talk about some of his charts, which I think are really good for big picture and investors and swing traders to see something. But, when we're doing it, it's like what we're trying to do every day, right, is like, well, how can we make money today? And how can we do so in a way where a loss is not a big deal? Losses are part of the game. And, we know what to do. And the thing is that I could teach this to this little execution matrix and how I trade to so many different folks, but we're all going to see a different way. If you, and this is implicit in me. I don't look at this now. And I mean, I do have a chart. I do have an Excel sheet where I do fill this out after the fact, but it's all inside me. But right now, let's say if you're in a mode and you're in accuracy based thinking, like, I don't know if this is going to hold or not, or should I take it or should I not? That's not the right question. Just be aware that that's not how you trade. There's no prediction here. We're thinking in terms of expectancy. So expectancy is looking at the accuracy based on the odds and everything, and just thinking, how much can I get out of this? What's my risk reward? It's accuracy times risk reward. And when you think like that, that'll help you. So today we were watching a video and we were talking about a bull bear zone, and it was like, hey, this thing was a huge trend day, and you're supposed to take it on the pullback continuation setup at a decent fib ratio, or ideally at just at the market structure. But this was a little bit of a weird day, and it bounced for like a couple hours, and then it got almost back towards the low of the day, which was not what you'd expect, right? So if it gets past that 61.8 on the pullback, it's sort of invalidated. But you see how everything's contextual, but because it wasn't just that, there was a bull bear zone right below the 61.8, which is a zone that, well, while I don't know if it's going to hold or not, the context says that if it does, I'm going to get a big reaction out of it. So I would take a small bet there. You know what I mean? Small meaning within the risk management of the 1.5 to 2%, ideally smaller. That's just the max. So I'm going to go through this execution matrix. Let me just control minus. I'm just trying to, if I can't see the room. So if you guys see, let me just, if Manu does show up, is Manu here? No, we got Miru. Oh, Manu's here. Okay, great. We got Manu, we got Sabril, we got everybody. We're gonna let Manu on in a little bit, but I just wanted to talk about a little bit of this trading matrix that can help folks. So getting into this day, it's like I had a feeling that we were not only going to have a gap suction to break this, but we were going to have a beauty principle that was going to mirror a day like this. Now, I didn't expect it to be this bullish, right? But now that we have that, and let me just, there we go. Now that we had this, right, the next day, right, we talk about the time frame analysis. And what we find is really helpful for day trading, right, is there's infinite time frames and markets are fractal. We got to put it into perspective. And remember, the time frame bias, especially the larger time frame bias, that's just one out of four of a matrix that can help you go in or long, right? So obviously at this point, because we broke a whole week of market structure, I mean, the intermediate terms like around a week or two, so that's definitely bullish. The short terms a couple of days, that's extreme. That's very bullish. And the big picture, right, is like 1 to 4 months. But based on this context, to me, the big picture is this downtrend, right? That's been the dominant pattern since, I don't know, November, December. Let me just pull this up. Let's see. Since, for some reason, I can't see the dates on my screen. So 3-4 months, right? But I didn't market the big picture as bearish. That's too mechanical, right? I'm neutral at this zone, right? At the location that I'm at this point in time, the big picture to me is neutral relative to tomorrow, because we're not at anything major yet. We're at a decent zone, but we could easily pop up, blah, 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 blah. It's not enough for me to say, okay, we're at such a big picture resistance zone. Now I'm going to shift my bias and possibly even short it. If we get a gap play up to this 200 moving average and we're into this big structure, yeah, we're going to have some sideways action, sideways down days. And then you can just flat out just start shifting your bias short term. But now that we have, so you might say, Matt, you talk about time frame alignment. That's one of the things you talk about on your probability scale. It's not on this execution matrix. The probability scale is like more things you would look at, but this execution matrix is literally almost like a computer programmer would. It helps you whether to go in. It can really help you when you're starting out. And I still fill out this on my Excel to this day. So just to give you an example. So on this day, I made a call for sideways. So bullish, the larger time frame bias is a combination of these three. So obviously bullish would outdo the neutral. So it's bullish. I'm not even neutral bullish. So what does the larger time frame bullish mean? Does that mean that after the larger time frame, you would, after a day like you had a huge day, we would go long on a breakout? No way. It means we're backing off, but every support zone now is weighted higher than it was. We're weighting support higher than resistance. And what it means is that everybody really, just in social market terms, who missed that big move is really jonesing to get in. I mean, come on. Everyone who missed that move is, oh man, my God, we want to get in now. So the amateurs are just getting in on the breakouts, and then everyone's selling into them. So the best thing to do is just to go with the trend and go long. So we had, so trade location, today's bias, larger time frame bias. If you went long on this day after the big day, that would be, you'd have a trade location on an extreme, and you'd have larger time frame bias. That'd be 2 out of 4. Okay, real quick. And then on this day, basically, I didn't make a call. I was ill, but the whole idea is that I'm not expecting after a huge move, we're just going to just keep going, right? I mean, this is decent. This is decent resistance. We've had some problems, but I'm not thinking that we're going to congest here and go back down. So today, Miro was asking me on a lower time frame. He's like, "Why did you give this signal to go long very aggressively? You didn't even draw a zone there." I mean, I should have drawn a zone, but I mean, it's, technically these are yesterday's lows. There should be a zone there, right? That's a zone, but whatever. It's you can see it, right? The idea is that when this came down, when I gave the signal, when it was looking like this, this is the new day. So that is the low extreme of this current day. So you would have trade location. We're not at a mega zone, right? We're not at anything major. We're not at anything that we just broken resistance becoming support and all that. So it's not ×2, but it is on your side. Now, if you didn't have a bullish larger time frame bias, you cannot go long there. You cannot go long on a 1-star quality trade. So the hardest thing to do a bit is like, can I just follow the process and then trust the process will work? And I can tell you, if you do this long enough with this process, it's hard to lose. You have to like really do some crazy stuff. And I was doing so well with the system in the last quarter. I took a huge chunk and just gambled on Elon stuff with no strategy, just trusting that those coins would moon and getting, and with those Bitboys, I said, "Wow, Matt, slow down. Those will work out, but that's not correct process. Correct process is to think in terms of expectancy. That's why I gave this signal to go long today, and I think Edgar took it, and he had a great trade. Now, let me just qualify that, right? This isn't like a great trade, right? I'm not thinking that this is sideways up and we're going to break the highs of the day and we're going to range. I'm thinking this setup would be on the system, which you also mark on the Scantron zone. It would be a zone fade for a tradable reaction, ZTR, not zone fade for reversal, the ZFT. This would be a ZFT. So ZFTs are not just they have certain rules, and the rules is that I'm really just almost thinking in terms of an absolute level. If I can risk, let's say, 800 points, and I can make 1,600 on it or whatever, that kind of thing, I'm getting out 2-to-1. I'm getting a quick 2-pop, 2R on my risk, and I'm getting out. I didn't have to think in terms of all multiples on this because it was such a tight range that you would just be getting out at the highs of the days. And I didn't take this. I gave it as a POI because I'm a little off today. I'm overcoming something. And but Edgar took it. So watch what happened. Popped up, right? Get out. You got the pop, you get out. It doesn't have to be perfect. You don't have to get the highest high. Just get out. You got your trade. You got your points, and you got out. You extracted. You had a trade idea, and you extracted expectancy. It had expectancy. So Miro was asking me, said, "Matt, why did you go long when it wasn't even at yesterday's lows? Isn't that the first key reference area?" Now yes, the first real key reference area would be yesterday's lows, and that's not nothing major. The only reason why it's major is the context of the big move we had. But if you just took this mechanically and drew a fib ratio from this low to here, and you had your orders at 38.2, 50, and 61.8, like I teach, you wouldn't have got filled. That's why on this day, when I gave the execution rule, I gave an either or, because I had a feeling that it was so bullish. I think I made it disappear, or it's on the daily. It was so bullish that you had to think about what was happening intraday, fading the low of the day or fading the low extreme of the day, because you weren't going to possibly even get in on that 38.2. So if you snap it from here to here, this is not even close to the 38.2. All right, it's more towards these lows here, and even these lows might not have got it. I'll snap it in a second. Actually, you know what? Let me just do it right now.
If you take the HVN of the 2 days, it hit the VPOC. But
oh yeah, I get. You mean clarify? I'm not following you.
If you take the HVN of the little balance at the top,
this balance here.
Yeah, it hit
the
VPOC.
I mean, like I said, we didn't buy at the high of the day. We bought, we're buying, we're kind of fading a little bit of structure. This is, an HVN like this, it's nothing major, but because we had such a mega move and the larger time frame is bullish, then now it has weight. So if you were looking at this when I gave the POI for the point of interest, 38.2, 50, these are the real ones you want to get in. So one of the rules I have for automatic fade setup that I have written down here on my wall is when I have a huge move in the overnight or something. So meaning the previous day. This was an abnormally huge move. So the most likely setup is now any pullback is going to get in. These fib ratios work very well. Now, we weren't into like a major resistance zone that could possibly reverse it, in my opinion. It's been tested before. And the way we got there was pretty awesome. I mean, this is a 3-day bounce breakout, 3.5-day bounce breakout. But it just goes to show you how nuanced it is. Now, fair enough, like I don't really talk about this fib ratio, 0.236, but that is a fib ratio, and it was at that one. So that, that's why I gave that POI signal. And, with the understanding that this would be for just a quick pop and you go all in, all out. We would not use a quad exit on this because we're not thinking like, hey, there's a good chance we're going to break the highs of the days. Let's take off half to 75% at the highs and then let the runner run. This is like, it's probably going to come back down and maybe you could go long again. Now, I almost posted this in the channel. As it was coming back down, I said, guys, well, one of the rules is that, once you got your 2-hour pop, as it's coming back down, that is the double bottom fitting the low of the day. I'm not as interested in that because like you kind of got your reaction at that mediocre zone. But it wouldn't be incorrect to go long there. That's just sort of nuance. It's like once I get that tradable reaction at the zone, there's probably lesser odds that it's going to get as much out of it. Also, we had this double top. It kind of sold off. Just it wasn't as attractive to do a POI there, but that was a decent pop. Now, obviously, we're talking about these days, but as a trader, it kind of kills us, right? When you miss the huge days, if you didn't catch this or whatever, you're jonesing. But when you have a bounce breakout, when it broke this structure, you're thinking, man, time frame alignment, I'm long now. I can't wait to trade. It's easy to trade. I have a plan to come in, and now there's something on my side that I can work with. So, what are the best trades? Then let's say on a day like this, okay. Now, this highlighted here, I think was a major zone. I'd have to zoom out on it. Yeah, it was a major zone. So the question is, okay, what's the class A trade? What's the class B trade? Now, once you see this type of momentum, right? I mean, and we're breaking structure. This is when you can take a contextual alignment breakout setup or a PC setup. It's like if you saw this and you broke there, and this is early enough in the day. This is 12:30 my time. So there's plenty of time left in the day, at least 6.5 hours left where you can get maybe another leg up. And that's when you would, just go long on a pullback, because when you break all these structures, right, it's not that these zones weren't good. I mean, it's just that the momentum is overriding them. And, they often can be support on the way back down, but that's when you would just get in on a as it's breaking out. If you were watching it, not that I like that. It's not my style. If I saw this hold, the idea would be that this is probably going to be a V, kind of a V, like Miro said, we have a V sideways dip go thing we always see. I like to see that on the larger time frames. I gave a whole bunch of reasons why I thought this would hold. To me, this was like we were building a structure above a major zone. Major zones have major moves, so that's when you would get very aggressive. This to me was a false breakdown that added to it, so that's when you can get super aggressive on the long side. Now, like I said, we look at the context. That's the most important. Price action, and then indicators, because aside from internals and most of the indicators that I have on my screen with the moving averages and whatnot, they're all derivatives of price. So they're kind of not telling you too much more than you would know. Although I do use them, as you can see, I have on the daily. They often it's almost like I imagine that this is like a dog, an owner, and then there's the price is the dog, and then eventually the owner would snap the dog back, dog leash principle. So like as I was telling Miro, it's like if we can get some conviction and break this structure here, this range, we're going to get a gap play up to this moving average, and that's when I would back off on the larger time frame bullish, and I would be more neutral. And the other thing too is guys, relative volume is such a great indicator. We always talk about absolute volume, but relative volume is so important. Like, let's say you were coming in on this day, you saw the false breakout, you wanted to be sideways up. Now, you didn't know that it was going to trend like this. We're not trying to predict things. You saw this, so the next day is coming up. You're thinking, man, okay, that pulled back down. It pulled back down into that same white zone that Matt highlighted earlier. We had the false breakdown. I'm interested in sideways up, going long again. I'm not thinking we're going to trend, but then you do start trending, right? You're going along because you're already prepped for it. You're holding value above the major zone. You're building structure, and then there's beauty, right? Everyone's seeing that we built structure, held, and broke out. Why couldn't we just do it again? That's the beauty. That's the beauty principle. Harmony in pairs. So yeah, that's my spiel, and we have a special guest speaker. We have Manu on. He is hello, Manu. Are you there, buddy?
Hey, Matt. Yes, I am.
Yes, sir. And you're in London time.
Yes, I am.
All right.
I'm back from the States.
Oh, you were in the States. Great. How's everything in the UK?
Yeah, it's fine. COVID is done. It's finished, which is good. It was a bit of a non-event, and I decided to pay no attention to the legal requirements anyway. So no real change for me. But it's nice to see people's faces on the tube these days.
Yeah.
Even if they are miserable.
Yeah. At least they have the chance to smile now. We could start trying to be human again a little bit, right?
Absolutely.
But yeah. So Manu, man, you're an artist. You've worked in investment banking, and now you're. Are you still in investment banking, or are you independent now?
No, I left. So I had a bit of a crisis of confidence. I used to cover a lot of the large multinational corporates and institutions, some of which were the good, wholesome people like Raytheon and BAE Systems. Good people that make wonderful products. So it caused a lot of conflict in my head because I kind of thought I really don't want to be helping these people because ultimately they are just murdering innocent people. Not very cool, and it kind of made me question the entire setup of what I was doing. And eventually I basically left to join a fintech called DMA, which is basically an institutional FX platform for banks and funds. The whole reason that we created that business was to really help create more transparency, more openness, just because banks are forever getting busted for trying to screw their clients over. They're just notorious for it. And, the most recent thing, I don't know whether you've seen, is State Street have been essentially shafting all of their clients by giving admin rights to their electronic trading platform to a whole bunch of hedge funds, which is just insane. And ironically, the guy that I used to deal with in London has out of nowhere disappeared and emigrated to Switzerland. I presume because he's completely innocent.
Wow.
Or maybe not. But yeah, it's completely nuts. So that's kind of what I did when I left. But yeah, I spent 17 years working basically in derivative sales. So again, selling inflation derivatives, interest rate derivatives back in the days where there were interest rates, commodity derivatives, and then more recently and really for the last decade, FX and FX options, and again algos as well for clients. So effectively, I left and set up a alternative platform, alternative liquidity provider for FX. And we're still small. We're still a startup. We're doing roughly about just under $2 billion a day in London and about $2 billion out of New York as well in volume, which sounds like a lot, but obviously we are interbank, so the margins are wafer thin. And about a year ago, I set up a digital asset platform as well, which I'm in the process of now acquiring fully and integrating. Which essentially was a bit of a copy and paste in terms of business, effectively so that institutions could trade Bitcoin, Ethereum, Solana, and what have you as well. Again, all of this is spot, no derivatives. So again, FX is fully unregulated for institutions, likewise for crypto, and probably will be forever. And as I kind of mentioned, I've just come back from the States. I was presenting at a FX conference in Miami, and it's interesting. I spoke to a lot of funds, and what was remarkable was just the level of excitement with digital assets. And what was quite interesting was the number of people that, I mean, obviously the big guys, BlackRock, Vanguard, Fidelity, obviously they're already in this. But I must have spoken to about 50 fund managers that manage tens, if not hundreds of billions of dollars that are looking to enter crypto, but they haven't quite got a sign off from compliance or from risk, or from one of the market structure guys within their divisions. So what this tells me is that you have people that manage probably tens and tens of trillions of dollars that are going to allocate perhaps 1% of their AUM to crypto, which means that we could see the market cap of crypto just in the next 18 months probably get a 10, maybe 15 trillion, which is absolutely insane.
Yeah.
So I was amazed. I was absolutely amazed because I read a report by State Street probably about a month and a half ago, which told me something slightly different. They said 20%, but I suspect they may have just gone to hedge funds when all of the high frequency guys are in crypto. But the traditional fund managers, the buy and hold guys, it's incredible the interest and appetite. And they all say the same thing when you say, well, what is the sudden interest? And the rationale is, again, the same logic I kind of use as well, which is they've lost confidence. They've lost confidence in the bond market, i.e., they've lost confidence in governments, not that they'd admit it. And they're extremely worried about how this whole scenario plays out. And even though they have a requirement to have, US Treasuries in their portfolio, they are looking to find other ways of filling that allocation. So they're moving out of bonds, interestingly, into other credit instruments, which is really interesting. I'm pretty sure they're not supposed to, but that's what they're doing because they're that concerned about government bonds. Now, the really interesting thing that I discovered was that essentially, I don't think you're familiar with this, but essentially, there is a market for pawnbroking for banks called the repo market, where you can supply collateral, usually in the form of government bonds, and you'll be lent fiat by a central bank. What's really interesting is that I spoke to about half a dozen US banks who no longer accept European sovereign debt as collateral. This is insane.
Wow.
This is absolutely insane. So this is European government debt that used to be absolutely fine, that a lot of these banks will no longer accept as collateral. Now that's completely nuts. I've never heard of anything like this before.
Yeah.
But what it says to me is that this is them being very concerned and very frightened about Europe. So I keep reading everything about the dollar's going to collapse to zero. This is the end of the US. This is utter bullshit. No way. Let's not forget that 75% of all the physical dollars are held outside the United States. The dollar has never been cancelled as a currency. I think the dollar is actually, well, all fiat currency is going to do badly in the next couple of years, but the dollar is going to outperform the euro. The euro is toast as far as I can tell, and the European sovereign debt market is a mess. So yeah, these are quite concerning times, but these are all justifications and rationales for why these fund managers are moving into digital assets, which is remarkable. So, and the other really interesting thing about this is that they don't really want to trade it; they just want to buy and hold the damn asset.
That's great.
Well, this is the thing, yeah. Because one of the conversations I had was essentially because the digital asset platform I've got is purely crypto to crypto. They kind of said, well, look, can I do one leg dollars or euros, one leg crypto? I said, well, yeah, you could do, I suppose, but why would you? And they said, because we want to buy the dip, we want to sell dollars, sell euros, buy the dip. If it falls more, we buy the dip again, and we continue buying the dip.
Manu, can I ask a question? How come the price is so low if the interest is so high? How come this bear market?
Because 95% of them haven't got sign off to actually enter the market.
The price isn't low enough for them yet, or?
No. It's got nothing to do with the price. It's just that these organizations move at a snail's pace. If you want to try and do something different or set up a new asset class, it takes sometimes up to 2 years to do it. So a lot of these guys started the process 12 months ago, some even 18 months. The guys that did it 18 months ago, the Vanguards and the BlackRocks, they're up and running. But a lot of the other guys, the tier 2 asset managers, they're still waiting to get the approval and get sign off to actually trade. So they're not allowed to. So it's not like hedge funds where you go and speak to your MD will go and speak to the CEO of the hedge fund and you'll make a decision in 24 hours. That's not how these funds work. You've got to go through a very bureaucratic process to get approvals. So you've got to go through new product approvals. It takes absolutely months and months and months. So it's not that they don't want to buy. They are desperate to buy.
Wow.
Okay.
They are just unable to buy at the moment.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
That's good for us. I mean, we've been accumulating for years, guys.
This is fantastic. This is the first time in history, I think, that you can front run the institutions and make a lot of
It's
money in the process.
It's a heads up for us to accumulate now.
Yeah,
Huh?
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So what are they buying?
So look, I think there's a huge amount of naivety about digital assets. I mean, it made me laugh at some of the things people were saying, and I had to pinch myself not to laugh at some of the things they're saying. There's this weird misunderstanding that crypto means Bitcoin, and most of the people I spoke to didn't really understand the difference between a single purpose blockchain like Bitcoin and a multi-purpose blockchain like Ethereum. They just didn't understand the difference, which is crazy. So so I think this evolution of their understanding is probably two-pronged. So the first bit is understanding digital assets are actually a great way to diversify their portfolio. The second will be when they think, holy shit, Ethereum is basically like the apps on my phone. I can have an infinite number of use cases for this very versatile blockchain. When that penny drops, that's when they begin to understand DeFi. And that's when we'll see a second evolution and a second deployment of more capital into this ecosystem. But to be entirely honest, most of these guys are pretty clueless. I was amazed. I was amazed at how senior these guys were, how much money they managed, and just how little they understood about the asset class. They were telling me we will be entering in 6 months. Honestly, it's absolutely crazy. But this is great, because what it means is that as they get into this asset and as they get more exposure, they're going to size into this. So I had an interesting conversation with one fund manager who essentially said that, look, he was looking to reallocate probably 5% of the gold allocation to crypto. And when I asked him why he was only allocating 5% of the gold allocation, he said essentially, well, because crypto is 5 to 10 times more volatile, therefore we'll adjust it for volatility, which is quite a logical way of doing it. Now, that's great, because if they all start doing this, then it won't just be 1 or 2% of their portfolio, it might be 5% of their portfolio. And these are huge numbers. So I think this is something really incredible, and I keep seeing this all over Cointelegraph, that institutions are kind of piling in and institutions are driving price. And look, admittedly, 97%, 98% of the trading volume is actually the hedge funds. They don't have as much capital as the traditional fund managers. They have shitloads more. So this is going to change the dynamics of this market, I think, and probably add to liquidity, add to depth, and probably make things much better for us. And once we begin to see this actually being executed, and these guys begin to pull the trigger and get into this market, we're going to see the one. We're going to see all mother of bull markets.
Can I ask another question, Manu?
Sure, of course.
What do those people say about regulations coming in? Do they mention anything?
So the thing is that they don't really care about regulation. So here's the thing. So I've reached out to the regulator in the UK, the FCA, and they don't give a shit. They couldn't care less about what I'm doing. And the reason they don't care, so for instance, I deal with banks and funds on spot FX, and I've been dealing with them for the last 3.5 years. I went to get regulated, and I was contacted by the regulator to say, look, we don't really care what banks are doing with each other. We could not care less. So deregister yourself and stop paying the fee. Likewise with crypto, they don't care. What they're concerned about is retail. This is where their focus is. So the institutional market, so these fund managers, they're all under MiFID framework, eligible counterparties, or ECP. They're big enough and ugly enough to know better. So if they make a mistake, then so be it. Unless someone has committed something incredibly illegal or has committed fraud, like for instance with the good wholesome folk at State Street, then obviously that suddenly is on their radar. But that goes from being a regulatory breach to being a criminal investigation.
Right, but nobody you've met on the institutional side is frightened of any kind of regulation to the crypto market.
No, it doesn't really. So okay, look, it depends on the jurisdiction, but most of the fund managers I spoke to are based in the US or based in the UK. Some European fund managers. So they were not concerned about regulation in any way, shape, or form. And the reason they're not concerned about regulation is, for instance, if I run a fund and I have $1 billion of capital and I allocate 1% of that to Bitcoin, I buy and hold. I'm not really trading it. From a regulatory perspective, what is the risk? If Bitcoin collapses to zero, I've lost 1%. But it's no different to having 1% of my portfolio in Tesla and Tesla collapsing to zero, which quite frankly is more likely.
Makes sense, yeah.
Yeah. So I think it's more about the amount. If these guys were going to go and reallocate 50%, then yeah, this would be a real issue. But because everyone's talking about very small percentages, again, the regulator doesn't really care. They're not that concerned about it.
Nice. Thanks, Mike.
Manu, what do you make? A lot of these regulators, whether it's the Fed chairman or somebody in Europe, and I think they just announced now that the EU is not going to attack Bitcoin. I guess before they were saying negative things about it. Powell now comes out and says, "Is this all just planned news speak from these guys to create a little fear for their buddies, or is it just because they're just
Yeah, completely 100%. So I had a really lengthy chat with the Banque de France, which is the French central bank, about central bank digital currencies. And look, my view on central bank digital currencies is that I am deeply troubled and deeply concerned by this, because essentially, speaking to the central bankers, it's very obvious that what they're trying to do is essentially merge and combine essentially monetary and fiscal policy. So what they want to do is have the ability to real-time tax you or have real-time interest rates. So for instance, if you say something negative, like in China, for instance, you might have minus 400% or something interest or some bullshit. But this is the impression I get. And also I can't get out of them the justification. So in Europe, we have the SEPA payment system. I can make a payment at 2 a.m. and if my counterparty is based either in the UK or Europe, they get it within 20 minutes. Why do I need a CBDC to make that payment immediately? The reality is I don't. So what's interesting about these guys is that they are pushing ahead with this. And by the way, they've already, they're pretending they're doing feasibility studies. They're not. They've already decided how they're going to do this and how they're going to roll this out. They're just working out how they transition from fiat to central bank digital currency. So the proposal I made was to beta test the payment rails using stablecoin, and then phase two would be to use essentially a synthetic CBDC. So a synthetic CBDC is basically a fiat collateralized stablecoin issued by a central bank, and then the final stage would be the thin air CBDC, which I'm hoping we never get to. But the way in which they are moving ahead, I would say, if I'm being honest, it's not going to happen anytime soon. We're probably 5, maybe 10 years away from the ECB doing it, which I'm surprised at because I kind of presumed they were about to pull the trigger, but they seem to be far further behind the curve than I thought. And just back to your point, Matt, in terms of Jay Powell and Christine Lagarde of the ECB, convicted criminal, Christine Lagarde.
Yeah, she looks like it too.
No, she was convicted. She had a criminal conviction. If you Google
Oh
Christine
my
Lagarde
God.
criminal conviction 2016, yeah, she partook in one of the biggest bribery scandals in French history when she was the Minister for Finance. Now, last time I checked, if I had a criminal record, I'm pretty sure I wouldn't be able to run a company, let alone run a central bank. But hey,
Yeah.
clearly she's better connected than me. But effectively, a lot of the rhetoric they have, a lot of the things they say about crypto, is purely out of fear. What they want to do is they want to ensure that they can push people to use their own digital assets and not the private digital assets. And what's crazy, and I still can't understand this, is they keep pushing the same bullshit narrative to say, oh, Bitcoin is used by criminals. Well, yeah, it's used by criminals that are morons because it's the most trackable asset in the world. But
Right.
so those criminals deserve to get busted for whatever nefarious crap they're doing. But these are all surveillance coins, and ultimately, the only real issue they have with these coins is not so much the fact that they believe they'll be used for illegal activities. The issue they have is it competes with their own central bank digital currency. That's the truth of the matter, and that's why they say this nonsense they say.
Yeah, absolutely. So do you see that have they sort of, initially, at least like 3 years ago, I've talked to a fund manager. Bitcoin's a scam. Da, 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 da. Yeah, I bet he wishes he didn't think it was back then. But it's like, are they replacing their narrative that crypto's bad and it's dangerous and we need to ban it with, how can we integrate our CBDC and link it to this private economy in crypto that's not going anywhere? I mean, do you see that the war against the private crypto is gone? I mean, are they going to attack Pirate and Monero, or are they just going to let that fly and just sort of bridge to their own CBDC so they can just monitor us more and tax us in real time?
So yeah, look, they're going to come after the private coins. But look, the way I positioned it with the French central bank was that I'm keen to launch Monero for institutions. And the reason I'm keen to launch Monero for institutions is because these institutions, once they realize how transparent blockchain is, you're really showing your hand to the market about what you're doing and how you're trading. So in order to give them some form of privacy and protect those investors, you need to have the ability to trade privacy coins. And the response from the regulator was from the central bank was essentially to say, look, if as long as you're aware of who's trading what with whom, then that seems reasonable. So I think we will probably be the first platform that will be allowed to trade Monero, which is awesome.
That's incredible. So they're saying, we know who you are, so yeah, now you can trade this private stuff. But if people we don't know who are trading private stuff, we want to know that.
Exactly. And the rationale I used was really simple, which was that, look, if, for instance, I do a transaction in Bitcoin, and let's say 2 years down the road, someone orders a hit on the dark web or some nonsense with that coin, it's a public ledger. So my name is in, well, not my name, it's pseudonymous, obviously. So my wallet address is in the mix. But what are the consequences for me for having done nothing wrong, but having made no mistake other than buying Bitcoin. And the reality is that who the hell knows? But it ain't going to be anything good. So how do you protect yourself from that? Well, as a business, it's quite difficult unless you have some way of getting privacy. So I think once these fund managers begin to look, you know, we're at stage one. You know, you're right. A couple of years ago, most of these guys told me that I was insane and smoking crack or even talking about crypto. Now they're all asking me what I buy and what cryptos I like. You know, it is nuts, right? But then when I talk about you know, what do I do with my stable coin or what have you, and I talk about yield farming or staking, they give me the same crazy look. Like it's nuts. But eventually they'll work this out. So what's going to happen, I think, is we haven't seen the look. Privacy is cyclical, and and the way I see this is that there will come a point, I think, very soon where the penny will drop and people will go, holy shit, digital assets are great, but digital assets without privacy are not particularly useful. And when that happens, I can see the privacy coins going absolutely nuts. So look, I mean, you know, with Monero, I feel depressed when I look at the price of bloody Monero. It should never be down here, but you know, anyway, it is what it is, I guess, right? But you know, Monero should be like $500, maybe even $1,000 at the moment. It shouldn't be $175. That's insane. You know, so it's or it's $176 or wherever it is. So I think we are yet to see this, and I think we're gonna see a big move towards this as people begin to work out just how transparent Bitcoin is and just how much they can be surveilled by the state. Because look, ultimately, you're right. This is all about one thing and one thing alone. It's about squeezing and extorting as much money out of every single one of us as humanly possible,
Yeah.
and that's what drives this.
Yeah, everything from the money printing to the taxation schemes to the fact that the corporations have tax breaks and lower rates because that's where all the rich people accumulate. Well, whoever knows the system, that's where you will accumulate your assets so they don't get fucked.
Yeah,
And you
absolutely.
can take advantage of, you know, all the, let's say if your corporation owns a building, you can rent it out to yourself and all of a sudden you have a tax break for that rent instead of, you know, you being having to write it off as an asset or whatever.
Absolutely. I mean, but this is so maybe the way to survive the next couple of years is to do exactly this and set up LLCs. And I mean, if you're based in the States, I'd probably set up an LLC in Canada, for instance. If
Yeah.
not,
I,
and then take advantage of the loopholes to the best extent of the law.
Yeah. There's legal loopholes. You know, Dr. Andrew Kaufman, I met with him a couple months ago, and he's telling me how he sets up his LCs where he doesn't pay any taxes. And we had Palmer on as a guest speaker, who basically said, "Hey, the insurance contract that I would set up for you is the exact same one that Warren Buffett uses to pay less taxes than his secretary." And you know, that's just absurd that we live in a world where the secretary, you know, where Warren Buffett would pay less taxes than anybody. But I mean, my whole thing is all taxation's theft. Let people earn what they keep, and then, you know, let the law of exchange interplay. And I think we'll be better off. But I mean, so I guess the question I was going to ask you, you know, regarding Bitcoin not being as being too transparent in a sense, is this whole what's the right word? It's this excitement of nations, you know, buying the dip, right? And
Yeah.
big institutions getting involved. And they're sort of like, you know, they're not saying crypto. They're saying Bitcoin. Bitcoin's
Yeah.
the answer to the government. Bitcoin's the answer to this. But as you pointed out, it's really not. So are they just not educated, do you think? Or are they being misled? Or are they purposely misleading their people to use Bitcoin because that will be the easiest to track and link to a central bank digital currency?
Yeah, I think it's probably the latter, unfortunately. I mean, look, it pains me to say I'm a big fan of Kathy Wood, but you know, unfortunately, she's just a mouthpiece for the system, like most of these people are. So I think that's why they are pushing the agenda, the narrative of Bitcoin, you know, and that's why they're talking about Bitcoin. I mean, look, don't get me wrong, you know, Bitcoin is a vast improvement to fiat money. You can't have this infinite amount of leverage, and you can't have this infinite amount of money printing that you do with the current financial system. So look, it's an improvement, but yeah, unfortunately, it is way more trackable and traceable than anything previously. So that raises a whole bunch of new issues that again, the narrative is being pushed away from asking any questions around this. But you know, that's where I'd be concerned about this.
I think also since Bitcoin is so stable, it can represent a way for them to extend this money printing bullshit into another asset class that still isn't pumped to shit. Because all the markets and everything is just like, you know, we're pretty much at the end of the line. but they could still get a couple of years worth out of it if they pump all that liquidity into something else like crypto, like Bitcoin itself and other cryptos afterwards. I think, at least. I don't know.
Yeah, look, potentially. Look, I think this entire financial system is on life support, and I think it will probably collapse in one way, shape, or form. But I don't think it's going to happen anytime soon. I think there's still, I look at this and I look at what the Fed has done. They've increased their balance sheet by 40% in the last 2 years. You've got the U.S. bond market, where your 10-year yield is, what is it? It's come off a little bit, 175, 180. When inflation, if you believe CPI inflation, which I do not, clearly, having coming back from the States, and Jesus Christ, shit is expensive in that country, man. Butter is like up 240% from what I can tell. I was there literally 18 months ago, and this price has gone nuts. So, but obviously, what they do is they take butter out of the CPI because no one uses butter, obviously. But effectively, if you have inflation, let's say at the government's level of 7% rather than 15, where I believe it is, then you're guaranteed to make a loss. Now, I look at that and think, holy shit, this is insane. But if you look around, I'd say 95% of not just the people of the United States, but 95% of the investment community look at it and they don't seem to, they shrug and they say, it's not the end of the world. There's a huge amount of confidence still in the bond market, in the dollar, and in the government, which I'm amazed by and appalled by. But
Yeah.
but sadly, no, my thought does not dictate what happens in the market. So I look at that, and as long as there is confidence and as long as there is faith and belief in the system will hold up. So if you look at the Weimar Republic, in the 1920s, why did that collapse? Why did we see hyperinflation? It wasn't actually to do with the money printing. And this is a point where I disagree with Ed Bugos and his thought process. Money printing is one component, but it isn't the be all and end all. The point of inflection, where the shit hit the fan, and where they went from not great inflation, so pretty high double-digit inflation, to hyperinflation.
Velocity,
Yeah, that was the moment where people lost faith in the government. So that's a subtle difference. So I think this is probably going to continue for a little bit longer. Look, don't get me wrong. I don't really want this financial system to collapse. I don't think it's going to end well for the majority of people, which is not good. So I think there's going to be some horrific consequences. I don't really want it to collapse, but it will at some point. And whether that happens in 5 years or 10 years, that I don't know, sadly.
Do you think that the Fed is going to, under the what's happening with Ukraine and Russia, they're going to say, okay, now we need to print more money. All that hawkish talk is now going to turn dovish, right? Is that the
absolutely? I lost my shit with an economist, and I shouldn't really speak to economists because I just get really agitated and tend to push their buttons because well, no, it's insane. So I just came off stage. I did my AI presentation. I just came off stage, and these two idiots went on, and they were asked the question about the transient nature of inflation. They were just chuckling away, and it's like, you guys have paid millions of dollars, and you have a wonderful standard of living. It's all well and good for you to chuckle away at the average person who's getting really screwed by what's happening. It's insane. They found it hilarious. And then I asked the question, said, where do you think interest rates will be by the end of 2022? And these morons said they reckon Fed funds rate will be 275. And I was like, no way. Unless you're smoking crack, there is no way in hell that they're going to be 275. Not going to happen in a million years. And lo and behold, what's going to happen now is that Putin has given a wonderful gift to every central bank. He's basically given them a wonderful reason to stop the tapering, if they ever started the tapering. To be honest, looking at the numbers, I can't see where they did or not.
yeah.
And basically print more money. I've got a question. Look, don't get me wrong. I want to believe that Putin is trying to fight the system, but unfortunately, if you Google Vladimir Putin, World Economic Forum, young leaders, then
Yes.
it comes up with a link. Now, if you click on the link doesn't work anymore. But if you go to the Wayback Machine, you can see the link, and he's on there. So he was a member of it. So
Yes.
is the timing because everyone got COVID fatigue, because the truckers were worrying Trudeau? Who the hell knows? But I don't think anyone is on anyone's side other than their own. So I think.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, I think this is well, it's not so convenient for the people of Ukraine, sadly, but this is just an opportunity that's going to be used to bring in the next round of money printing, but also the next round of tyranny. There's this insane piece of legislation they're trying to pass in Europe, whereby they're going to ask the World Health Organization, that really non-corrupt organization, the incorruptible organization, the World Health Organization, to intervene in the next pandemic, which they believe is going to be in 2025. Now, how the hell do they know?
Incredible. Not only are they
Yeah.
humanitarians, they have amazing remote viewing and Nostradamus-like gifts.
It's crazy unless they've planned the whole thing. So yeah, there's a lot of things happening in Europe that that are really very alarming, really very troubling. And
In
you know, I
sorry, in Canada, they want to pass a bill where basically if you fear that someone may publish, and listen, and my words are selected carefully and correctly, if someone may publish what's considered hate propaganda, they can get a judge to go and arrest the person.
well, but what does
Not
that
if you've
even,
committed it, if you might commit the act.
if you
So,
might commit?
which essentially is like
Minority
perpetually,
Reports.
right?
That's like Minority
Exactly.
Reports.
That Tom Cruise
Exactly.
movie. Yeah.
That's
We're
Exactly.
insane. That's absolutely insane.
Fucked.
But I don't understand this state of affairs. Look, there's lots of people that have different opinions to me. Lots of people that are you know that have some pretty extreme opinions. But just because I don't agree with those people doesn't mean they shouldn't be allowed to express them. And I saw some quote the other day, was hilarious, which was a meme. Essentially, it says, "I believe in free speech. I don't believe in hate." And the other person said, "I believe in physics, but I just don't believe in gravity." And it's a really interesting comparable, really. I think there's always going to be some elements of your opinion, your worldview that is going to offend somebody somewhere. But what are you going to do about it? I mean, I'm sure my opinion pisses some people off, but it just is what it is. I don't mean them any malice out of it. I'm not doing it to harm them. It's just we have a difference of view.
Yeah, it's about control and fear. I think like most people think that if you legislate something, so they'll see, oh, look, this guy's calling for these people to be hurt. If we'll make it illegal for him to do it, then we'll avoid, this from happening in the future, which is absolutely it's retarded. It's the same faulty mentality behind gun control. Like, do you fucking not understand that the criminal doesn't give a shit if the law is there or not, or what? So yeah, I guess.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And I think yeah, look, I think it's quite troubling where the world is going from. We seem to have this top down authoritarian system lurking behind the frail the frail veneer of democracy that I believed we had in the UK. We certainly do not. And what I find hilarious is our foreign secretary in the UK basically was encouraging people in the United Kingdom to pick up arms and go and fight with their brothers and sisters in Ukraine. This is the same person that 6 months ago, if I went to protest about getting my freedom back or being able to maybe go on the tube without a mask, I would have been arrested. But now, of course, it makes complete sense for me to pick up weapons and arms and go and fight in Ukraine against Russian tyranny. I mean, it's nuts.
Yeah.
I mean, man, do you see that, crypto, right? Allegedly, this is going to be the greatest transformation in wealth in human history. I mean, could this potentially create a new wealthy, more aware, younger class of people that's going to issue in the new earth in a sense? I mean, I would like a bunch of people like us to have a bill. I'd like us to be the Rothschilds of the world and create heaven on earth. I always imagine, I mean, these guys have billions, if not trillions of dollars. And
For you
that's
to
what they
be-
do with it, like create a party, create heaven on earth, go do something amazing. Why would you, use your money to create Georgia Guidestones and try to depopulate the world? It seems like a waste of energy to me.
Yeah, look, I think we will. I think by the end of this decade, we will see a move to a completely different system, and a system basically not run by these evil people. What's remarkable about the last 2 years is, I probably had my awakening, I don't know, probably about 6, maybe 7 years ago, after a super high dose of psychedelics. Really woke me up and completely changed my life for the better, by the way. But what's remarkable about the last 2 years is the number of my friends that were just brainwashed slaves that have suddenly started to question things, suddenly started to say, you know what, if slavery is stealing 100% of your earnings, what is it called when the government steals 60%? I was like, kind of slavery. It's remarkable. So there's a big change, I think, or the last, it's crazy. The last 2 years have really accelerated the process of waking up people that I thought, quite frankly, would never awaken. So I think we will see a radical shift, and I think we will see this awakening continue. And I think the 2030s are going to be exponentially better than the 2020s could ever be. But I think before we get there, there's going to be some quite troubling times.
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to, when the crypto revolution happens in a couple of years from now, I mean, I want to travel the whole world in a fractal mini yacht and meet everybody. I got friends from all over the world from this Telegram group, and quite frankly, I'd rather hang out with digital people all across the world that are on the same wavelength than just normie zombies in my town. And I guess, like they say, it's like, be the change you want to be in the world. And I had to go through a lot of releasing a lot of anger because it's kind of insane, right, to be angry if you can't change someone's mind. But I had a lot of that, like, don't you see what I see? Don't take, whether it was vaccine issues or whatnot. But at the end of the day, I guess, be love and be the change you want to be in the world. That's probably for the best. But I wanted to ask you about your psychedelic experience, and was
Sure.
it ayahuasca? Yeah.
No, it was psychedelic mushrooms. Well, it's not a funny story. It's actually quite a deeply disturbing story. But essentially what happened was that working in investment banking is pretty stressful. Working in sales and trading, is challenging. It's not for everyone. It's not a particularly wonderful environment. It's very hostile. It's very toxic because there's so much money at stake. And effectively, the guy that sat behind me, Justin, unfortunately, he one day committed suicide because he was under so much pressure, under so much stress. And I kind of sat there thinking, well, I didn't really know him very well. And he sat behind me for 5 years, and my ego was taking over, saying, I'm not saddened by this. No big deal. People die all day. The guy was 31 years old. It was deeply sad and deeply troubling, and I just couldn't get over it. Weeks and weeks would go past. I was just like, I just could not. I couldn't deal with it because I was. It really derailed my entire belief and understanding of the world. And I happened to read an article in New Scientist about psychedelics and their use in grieving, and how they can be used to basically radically reshape people's belief systems, treat atypical depression. So I thought, holy shit, I've never ever wanted to do this, but this is an amazing scientific journal. I think I'll give it a go. And I made the mistake of Googling psychedelic drugs and how to take them, because I was pretty clueless. I had no idea. So I watched a couple of videos of a guy called Klindi IE, who is a martial art, sadly passed away a few years ago, a martial arts expert from Detroit, one of my favorite towns, by the way. And he took super high dose. So he took, what was he taking? I think he was taking 40 grams or 45 grams of psychedelic mushrooms, dried psychedelic mushrooms, which is insane. And because my ego was the size of a small country back in those days, I kind of thought, well, if he can take 40, I can take 25, which I did. Yeah, I've got to be honest. That was perhaps the most frightening experience of my entire life. That was 7 hours of being in my very own, very special horror movie. But I'll tell you what, though, when I got out of that, I basically kind of walked out of my flat. At the time, I was living right next to the river. I watched the sunrise, and I just thought, you know what? I've never ever in my entire life realized how beautiful the sunrise is. And it was incredible. It completely changed my mindset, completely changed everything. I mean, it may have given me a little bit of PTSD, teeny bit of PTSD, because it's quite traumatic. But in terms of killing my ego, my God, absolutely. And that's when I began to question what the hell I was doing, and whether maybe I should try and create a better way of working, a better way of dealing with business. And that's kind of when I began to think, well, how do I do this? And eventually led me to setting up my own business. And one of the first things I did was to make sure that every single employee that we have owns shares in the business, every single one. So if we make a real success of this, and we really, knock it out of the park, and we get acquired by, one of the big fund managers or one of the big banks, then we don't just benefit as founders. Actually, every single person, from the sales guy to the person who sat in the operations team to the person who sat in the office, every single person. And I probably wouldn't have done that had I not had that experience. But what it made me realize was that this is this reality that we have is one of a shitload of realities. And it was incredible. That was the moment where suddenly, out of nowhere, I had this huge need and huge desire to kind of express a lot of my issues and concerns through art, which, by the way, I never had any training in making artwork, never had any interest in it whatsoever. But something somewhere flicked a switch, and yeah, out came my alter ego. Obviously, I had to use a fake name because sadly, when you make anti-war art, when you look after weapons companies, not really very well received. And hence my alter ego.
And I just want to see if I heard you right. I think I did hear you right. Did you say 25 grams?
Yes,
Wow.
I
Wow.
did.
That's heroic dose. They say is 12, and that's from what's that? What's his name?
Terence
can't.
McKenna. I think Terence said 5 actually, but
Yeah, it might have been
um,
less. I did 3.5 and 5 one time, but 25.
5 dry grabs. Yeah, 25 is insane.
I mean, did you leave your body? Were you in a totally different realm?
Oh,
mean,
I was completely gone. Because basically I kind of was reading about, again, like I was totally clueless. I had no idea what I was doing. I've got to be honest. I have a very understanding wife, and I said, look, I'm trying to deal with this grieving process. It's really causing a lot of mental issues. I believe